over, and Israel had said they were ready to receive them. But look, I mean, this is a very kind of fluid situation. We know that the Red Cross is involved in it, and I understand from the Red Cross that they were always hoping to kind of do this when there was some daylight, because obviously the risk of things going wrong does happen at night when you're talking about driving in a large convoy. And that's kind of what we're expecting, is that all 20 hostages will come out at once in 6 to 8 vehicles taken out by the Red Cross. Now, Israel has demanded that there's no kind of propaganda around this visit on behalf of Hamas, like we've seen in previous hostage releases, where there were these, videos, and you'd have Hamas masked militants carrying firearms walking around them. Israel has said it doesn't want to see that, but of course, what the Red Cross says is its priority is just to get these hostages out. So we will have to see how it plays out. Once the hostages are returned into Israel, they will go to a base that's very near to the border. We were actually there today. It's about 7 kilometers from the border with Gaza. From then on, they'll get to meet their families, and then they'll be taken to hospitals. Now, of course, Adrienne, we're talking about the 20 hostages who are alive. We know that there are 28 others that were killed in Gaza, and part of this process involves bringing their remains back. But Hamas has indicated that it could be some time before they're all returned, because some of them, they don't know where they are. They might be buried under the rubble, and it will take a lot of work to return them. And in terms of the hostages who have been killed, some are expected to be returned tomorrow. And when they are returned, they will be taken to a forensic lab for identification and then eventually returned to their families. Now, as I said, there's just a lot of anticipation about this moment. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke about it a little earlier, talked about how there is a need for the country to be united. Take a listen.
This is an emotional evening, an evening of tears, an evening of joy, as tomorrow's sons shall return to their land. This is a historic evening which combines sadness over the release of murderers with joy over the return of hostages. It's a historic event which some didn't believe would happen, but our troops believed, many of our people believed, and I believed.
And I think it's important to talk. Go ahead.
So everybody knows we have a little bit of a delay. So why don't you pick up? I'll stop talking now, and then I'll chat with you when you're done.
No problem. I think, what's important to say there is that, Netanyahu was talking about how the country accomplished this. And as I mentioned, he was calling for people to be united. But there is a very, palpable sense of anger from many towards him, particularly the hostage families and those who have been supporting them so closely during this time, because they really do believe that the government should have acted much sooner to bring the hostages home, entering into some kind of agreement. And I think that emotion and that frustration was very evident on display last night when you had U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff in Tel Aviv in the square there. People were cheering and praising Trump, but the moment he mentioned Netanyahu's name, the crowd started booing, and they started booing very loudly. So loudly, in fact, that Witkoff had to stop himself a couple of times and say, hey, just let me finish the address. And so, that's kind of the emotion towards Netanyahu for many people here. But we know certainly when Trump visits tomorrow, we do expect to see quite a few crowded streets here in Jerusalem.
Yeah, the reaction to Netanyahu has been interesting throughout. The families have been asking for what they call a commission of inquiry, probably since October 8th, 2023, into how this happened in the first place and why the reaction was so slow. He has put it off since then, saying, let's get them home and then we'll talk. This sort of feels like the moment where they are going to immediately demand some accountability. One other thing, Briar, that we should talk about is that the aid trucks, some of them have finally started arriving in Gaza. We've seen cooking fuel, gasoline, some food, some other supplies. Can you bring us up to speed on the latest on the humanitarian deliveries?
Yeah, some aid trucks have been going in, but nowhere near that 600, truckloads a day of aid that is supposed to be part of this deal. A little earlier today, I was in the south at the Kerem Shalom border crossing, and when we were standing there, we saw a few dozen trucks go in, and obviously that's just one of a number of border points. But what we're also seeing, and from our videographer who is on the ground in Gaza and is able to capture images for us, what has happened is that you have crowds of desperate people, desperate Palestinians that are crowding around these trucks, taking the supplies off of them in some cases, even before they reach the distribution center. And this is a problem, obviously, because, the people are desperate, people are hungry. There's been months of deprivation, but, there's not really a system in place to secure this aid at this point and to evenly distribute it. So I think we are really going to be watching over the next couple of days just what kind of system will be put in place. And a big change in terms of how the aid is being distributed is that the UN is basically back in charge, because for a while it was the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that was that US-backed group that was very controversial because they only operated a few sites and it was very dangerous for people to access them. Well, they seem to be, winding down their operations, and it's the UN that's back in charge when it comes to this aid.
Yeah, interesting point that it's UN back in charge when it comes to the aid, but in terms of being whoever is in charge of Gaza, that seems to be the problem at the moment, because no one is in charge. We're seeing sort of armed gangs plus Hamas fighting each other. This void feels dangerous for many people on the ground who've already been through so much. What is your sense of what comes next for Gaza? Let's just say we're 24 hours from now, the hostage and prisoner swap under phase 1 are complete. What can you tell us about what happens next in the Strip?
Well, it is a really precarious situation because, there's the question of who's in charge right now. And of course, we've seen those images of Hamas militants, police officers on the streets, armed. But there's also been reports of clashes, Hamas clashing with a clan in Gaza City, leading to a number of deaths. And in fact, Israeli officials have talked about that, saying that there's been no ceasefire violations between Hamas and Israel, but there is internal fighting going on there in Gaza because Israel's forces have pulled back, so they're in control of 53% of the area. So you have this other part where, there's a very big risk that it could, devolve into a very dangerous, chaotic situation. And as part of that, peace framework that, Trump unveiled last month, the language in it talks about the need for a international stabilization force to deploy immediately. Well, that's not in place yet. And there are really no public details around what countries would be contributing to that, how it would work, where they would be stationed. I mean, these are all the questions for the days ahead, but really the need for some kind of, securing force or some kind of arrangement is really needed there on the ground, just considering the environment.
Well, you're talking about an immediate need. I mean, we're hearing, to your point, we're hearing from the Egyptian foreign minister, for example, who spoke to CBS News, saying that Egypt is working on different security arrangements, including training and then coordinating 5,000 Palestinian personnel to be deployed. Everything talked about in the future tense, where the need is immediate. So watch that space, if you will, in the next few days. That is the CBC's Briar Stewart in Jerusalem for us tonight. So let's go back to Tel Aviv, to Hostages Square. Preparations are underway there as the return of hostages draws fairly near. Hostages Square has been the scene of these demonstrations against a war for over 700 days. Over the last few days, ever since the announcement of the ceasefire deal, that square has grown with people, a very different feel to it. They're excited. They want to see family members back. They want to never return to that square again, to have that feeling that they've done their job and they can leave. CBC's Crystal Gamansingh is in the square, joins us now. What does it feel like there right now, Crystal?
Well, Adrienne, you said that people don't want to return here to Hostages Square, and it's a good point, because at some point people want to see it just being called the Tel Aviv Plaza again and not Hostages Square. Tonight it is a different feel. It is full of anticipation, full of hope, full of excitement. And even just as more people continue to stream in, there are children who are doing some painting on the ground. Only blue paint available for those pictures, so lots of blue and white there to represent the colors of the Israeli flag. But there are also these handwritten messages that are quite touching as they flutter in the wind, white paper tied with those very symbolic yellow ribbons. And there is some clapping and some music that's quietly going on as more people stream in. There was quite a bit of confusion and anticipation. People were told they would open up around midnight, then told, well, no, maybe this won't happen till about 8 a.m. And a lot of people will frantically run around and say, oh, it's happening, but not quite yet. I want to bring in Efri. He is here tonight. And one of the reasons that I wanted to chat with you is because you have such a big smile on your face.
Yes.
Tell me, first of all, about that smile, about how you're feeling this evening.
So I think I'm reflecting the feelings of a lot of people in Israel right now. We are really excited to see all the hostages back at home. We waited for this moment almost 2 years, more than 2 years. It was difficult 2 years. We suffer a lot, not only the families and the close friends, all of the people in Israel. So yeah, it's a little bit of relief, and we finally can breathe.
We were talking about that because you said it felt like the collective community was holding their breath, waiting for that opportunity. Today, what were the conversations with your relatives, your friends, as you decided if you're going to come down here and made your way?
Yeah, so actually as Israelis, we are always a spectacle. Like we need to see them over here in Israel after, they take a little bit medicines and medical care. So we want to see them over here on our land, to see them with their families. I know that my family is really excited, all my relatives, my friends, we are so happy to be here tonight and, to share a little bit of solidarity with our people.
How are you preparing? Because the 20 that Israeli officials did confirm, 20 are in fact still alive. We don't know their condition. They have been in captivity for more than 700 days. Are you nervous to see their physical shape? Is that something that is going to sort of temper your reaction to their return?
I'm sure there will be some people in a bad condition, and we need to be prepared for this as well. I know that a lot of experienced people will take care of them. We as people, when we see those photos, it's really hard when they were captured, and when they will come back, it will be hard as well. But they will be here, and we will take care of them, and we will make sure that they and their family will be fine, and will start a new life after all the horrors that they will suffer during the last 2 years.
Last night, Hostages Square and the streets around were just packed full.
Yeah.
There was such a big celebration. Speeches from U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, the President of the United States son-in-law, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump. There were moments that were loud cheers and excitement. And then we know that when Steve Witkoff mentioned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there were loud boos. He almost seemed like he was trying to calm the crowd down.
Yeah.
There is frustration. There is a level of anger that it's been 2 years. Some people saying it could have happened sooner. Are you thinking about that tonight? Is that what is going through your head, or is the accountability, the questions needing to be answered for tomorrow?
I think it's all together, like it's all mixed in our feelings today. We are in a democracy, and there are a lot of opinions of many people, and that's the good side of our country. I think that this night we need to celebrate, and we need to take this moment to feel a relief and to breathe a little bit. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. Many people, not only the hostages, not only the people in the south of Israel, also in the north of Israel, also in the central of Israel. We suffered a lot during the last 2 years, and we need to receive those answers. So I hope tomorrow we will celebrate, but after we will see them over here, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered.
Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad to see you smiling. And I'll let you get with your family and friends to start those celebrations. Thank you so much. So there is that sense, Adrienne, of needing to be here today, needing to come together to exhale, as we just heard there, but there is that deep sense of longing for questions. There's a longing for continued security, but also wanting to know, why did it take 2 years? What were the conditions? And, he mentions democracy, and Israelis will be going to the polls. That election has to be held by October 2026. And no doubt Prime Minister is thinking about that. Earlier today, when the Israeli President, Isaac Herzog, was here, he talked about the community needing to come together, needing this time to celebrate, to heal. He also made a point of thanking U.S. President Donald Trump for his continued efforts towards peace, saying that the Middle East is changed. And we have to remember, this is phase 1 of this peace deal. Phase 2 will start with those negotiations after the return of all of the hostages. And that is the point where Herzog said he wanted people to know that Israelis don't want war. They want peace. They want to see a changed Middle East. Right now, what people want is to be able to see those released hostages in the hands of the Red Cross and then turned over to Israeli Defense Forces, and to know that they're home, knowing that there will be a lot of challenges. There will be need for their mental condition, for their physical condition, but they just want to see them back at home. Adrienne?
Crystal, to that point, I know there are big screens all over Hostages Square, and as you said, people want to see, but I think we've been warned repeatedly by the Israeli government that it won't be like past hostage releases where you are likely to physically see the hostages come out because their condition is so fragile, life-threatening in some cases. The notion of captivity medicine is something that is still sort of evolving. Can you give people a sense of how careful they're being with these hostages and how they need to sort of treat them medically just to make sure they're okay?
Well, the Red Cross will be the first ones that they will encounter, and Red Cross officials have said that they will start by confirming who they are, explaining, because they might not know that they're being released. They might not know what's going on. So it is up to the Red Cross to give them that initial comfort, that initial information, and to explain they're taking them back to Israel Defense Forces. When they're handed over, then there will obviously be psychologists who will be speaking with them. They'll be taken immediately to the hospital. 2 different hospitals, including one here in Tel Aviv, is prepared to receive them. They will be sheltered. They will be kept away. They will eventually be brought to their families, but there will be a need to protect them, to give them that moment to sort of resettle. I don't think really anyone who hasn't been in their situation can imagine being held captive for more than 700 days, not sure of what's going on, and then the day of their release, according to the Red Cross anyways, potentially not even sure of what's happening then. So it could be a moment of intense stress, wondering what's going on. So that is the reason for the protection. But we have heard from the Hostages Family and Missing Family Forum that there will be some images up on the screen for people to watch, likely after the fact, once they're settled in. But people here don't care. They just want to be able to see and know that they are in the hands of Israeli Defense Forces.
Okay. Crystal Commencing, thank you very much in Hostages Square. I know you have a long night ahead of you, but we'll be right here with you. Thank you, Crystal. So I just want to show you the scene last hour at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, the United States. U.S. President Donald Trump is now making his way to Tel Aviv on Air Force One. When he arrives, he will meet with the families of the remaining Israeli hostages. He will also be addressing the Knesset. It is possible, he has indicated he wouldn't mind meeting some of the hostages if time allows, if their health allows. After that, Trump will be heading to Egypt for a summit on the Gaza peace agreement. He'll be joined there by other world leaders. It's kind of a remarkable summit being established very, very quickly. Prime Minister Mark Carney, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, among those who will be there. So again, you're watching special coverage of the hostage release. That is the ambition, that this is what you're about to see over the next few hours, the release of the hostages, the release of the Palestinian prisoners. and a continued sort of cessation of the violence in that region. We have this moment covered for you from all angles tonight, with the understanding that we don't know when it's going to happen. It is possible it could happen any moment now, or it could happen potentially at 8 a.m. just before President Trump lands in Israel at expected around 9:20 a.m. Do not think the timing of any of that is a coincidence. CBC's Tom Perry is in Cairo ahead of the Peace Summit. And Katie Simpson is in Washington. So we've got everything. Tom, I want to go to you first, if I can, because I know your time is tight in Egypt. Let us know what is happening, if you can, with this summit in Egypt. What's the latest?
Well, as people in Israel are waiting for the hostages to come home, as people in Gaza are waiting for the prisoners to return, world leaders are converging on Egypt, on Sharm el-Sheikh. You mentioned some of the people who are going to be there. Keir Starmer, Emmanuel Macron, Mark Carney announced tonight that he's going to be coming to the summit. And this is all hosted by Egypt's president and by U.S. President Donald Trump, who's really here really to mark, to celebrate this achievement that he and his team and his partners in Turkey and Qatar and Egypt have managed to get the Israelis and Hamas to agree to this ceasefire deal. Now, this summit that they're going to be attending on Monday, it's got a big goals set to end the war in Gaza, to work toward peace and a lasting peace in the Middle East. But really, it's not going to be. It's not really taking that long. This is not going to be a long summit. Trump's only in the Middle East for a few hours, so it's hard to know what is going to be achieved in that period of time. Also, worth noting, Israel and Hamas will not be at this summit, and so the two combatants in this war will not be there. But I guess the point would be to be looking maybe further ahead toward that lasting peace, toward what comes next, and also how to make the ceasefire in its current form stick and make sure that the Palestinian people in Gaza get the help they need.
I'm thinking about how many details have been sort of massaged over the last few days about just this first phase, the timing of the release, which Palestinian prisoners. This is complicated enough. It feels like the biggest things are the ones yet to come that will be glanced at in Sharm el-Sheikh. So what does success at that summit even look like?
You know, I think it's hard to say what success is going to look like coming out of this summit. As I say, it's not a very long summit. We'll see how much detail comes out of it. We'll see what the countries agree to. I guess there's a symbolism, there's an importance to bringing these people together at the end of such a bloody and terrible war to try to make sure that it is well and truly over. I think success for the people in Israel, for the people in Gaza, is going to be measured by what happens on the ground. Does this ceasefire stick? Is this violence truly over? The hostages have got to come home. The prisoners have got to be released. And of course, in Gaza, aid has got to be delivered. This is short term. Aid has got to be delivered to the Palestinian people. We've seen some movement. We've seen reports of some trucks crossing into Gaza. We've got the World Food Program, the United Nations, others talking about just tens of thousands of tons of aid that can be brought in, that they're ready to start bringing in. I think that will be a good measure of success. If we do see that, as the ceasefire says will happen, aid getting in to the people of Gaza, again, that's short term. Long term, what happens in Gaza? How is it rebuilt? What happens there? How do the Palestinian people stay there if they want to? All big questions. Maybe we'll start hearing some of those questions, if not answered, at least broached, at least talked about at this summit on Monday. But again, success. I think success in the short term is just going to be getting the hostages home, getting the Palestinian people the support that they need.
Okay. All right. That's the CBC's Tom Perry in Cairo. All eyes on Egypt in the next day or so. Thank you, Tom. So this is Katie Simpson, who is in Washington. We're going to Katie now because we know that Donald Trump boarded Air Force One. He's on his way to the region. He does what he often does, is as soon as he's wheels up and they're at altitude, he starts talking. So what's he expected to do in the Middle East, Katie? What's he already saying?
This is the start of a very short but obviously high-stakes meeting. He is on his way to Israel. He'll be meeting with hostage families and possibly some hostages. We're still waiting from clarity from the White House in terms of if that is anyone who is recently released or this is individuals who've been released previously. He will then address the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, and then he will be heading to Egypt. He will be taking part in that peace ceremony. His presence really underscoring the American commitment to this process. Donald Trump, before he stepped on that plane, Adrienne, let's have a listen to what he was saying as he was boarding Air Force One, sort of setting the stakes for this visit and what he sees as a massive achievement in his foreign policy agenda.
So this is going to be a very special time, and I guess if you read your own papers and your own networks, everybody's very excited about this moment in time. So I'll see you on the plane. I think you're traveling with us, but this is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before. So I'll see you on the plane, and we're going to have a good time.
So, Adrienne, as you mentioned, as soon as Donald Trump stepped onto that plane, he went sort of back to the area where the reporters sit and started having a conversation with them. Because it's happening on Air Force One, we're not expected to get any video back until they actually land. However, we do have we have a live stream of some of the audio. So here are some of the things that Donald Trump has told reporters. It is my understanding that is still actually going on in this moment. But he was asked a question about, Benjamin Netanyahu hasn't gone as far as to say this war is over. And Donald Trump pushed back against that, saying, the war is over, okay? Do you understand that? The war is over. He also talked about how he thinks it's going to hold because in this moment, people are so exhausted from the ongoing fighting that this is a moment for this breakthrough because of the exhaustion around this. He talked a little bit about how long it's going to take to do rebuilding in Gaza and just what a massive undertaking that's going to be. And he described it saying, it's going to take a while. The rebuilding will start immediately. He says it's got to start with removing structures. He described it as saying it's blasted. It's like a demolition site. They have to get rid of some structures that are dangerous and that they're going to fall down. And he seems to, suggest that he seems to understand just the gravity of the situation there and how significant it is. He talks about what he wants to see in the long term, and he talks about how it would be fantastic if relations with Israel were normalized. That's a big thing that he's looking forward to. He said it would be fantastic. He talks about the enthusiasm there is from different world leaders to be involved in the governing body to create peace in the region. That is something that he's very excited about. He talks about how significant the challenges are going to be. One other thing, Adrienne, he did mention, he said the hostages might be released a little early, but he didn't want to confirm that, but he told reporters that. So that's something significant of note. And he talked about his relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, first noting that Netanyahu put him up for the Nobel Peace Prize. That, of course, is something that Donald Trump very much wants to be awarded, even before what's sort of the breakthrough that's taken place in the past week or so. This is something he's openly been campaigning for. And he continues to make that push. He talked about Benjamin Netanyahu, described him as, quote, a wartime president. And he said, quote, he did a good job. He cited that they did have some disputes, but said that they were settled very quickly. And he again said that Netanyahu did a great job. So that is to the point where I was able to listen to of that news conference that's happening in the air right now, Adrienne, before we decided to have this conversation right here. But again, it is my understanding it's still ongoing. We can't just show it to you live because, of course, it's happening on a plane.
Okay, well done. We will keep an eye on the wires. We get red alerts every time he says something, so we should see those soon. We've been spending a lot of time talking about the next 24-ish hours, but Washington, I gather, we're getting some more information about the days and weeks ahead. What does that look like?
Yeah, Vice President J.D. Vance appeared on a number of U.S. news networks today to sort of talk about what that looks like and what the perspective is, at least from Washington in this moment. And he was asked a lot of questions about the U.S. troops that are already stationed in the region. The Trump administration had said late last week that there are going to be 200 American troops that are going to be sort of involved in maintaining the ceasefire. And he offered some explanation as to what that looks like. First, he said that American troops will not be going into Gaza. He made that clear, and he talked about how other nations are going to be taking that on in sort of a peacekeeping role. He talked about Indonesia. He talked about other Muslim-majority countries, saying that that is where the lead on that is going to be taken. That that inevitably there are going to be disputes in the region, and that the American troops are going to be there to sort of underscore that people are abiding by the terms of this 20-point peace plan. There's a recognition that this moment is fragile, despite all of the optimism, enthusiasm, and excitement that you're hearing from Donald Trump directly. You're also hearing it from J.D. Vance. But again, there is a recognition that there are going to be challenges and disputes ahead, a sort of a realistic sort of approach to this because of the complicated history, the complicated process here, and what they are dealing with in this moment. So that's sort of what J.D. Vance offered. And he said that the United States president is committed to ensuring that pressure is applied on all sides to make sure that the parties that are involved in this are abiding by the terms. So J.D. Vance making it very clear that the United States remains committed to this process, that the United States will continue its presence in the region, and that it is going to do what it can to sort of push this process ahead, no matter how long it takes.
Okay, and who knows how long it will take. Katie Simpson in Washington, as always. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks.
So I want to spend some time talking with my colleague here, Mark Carcassol, who is joining me tonight. And we're not sure what we're in for in the next hour or so, but what are you keeping an eye on, Mark?
Well, we know that Prime Minister Carney will be headed to Egypt for this historic summit to celebrate the signing, to witness the signing of this peace deal. Sort of a, more of a spectator type role for the Prime Minister there, definitely. But we just learned this about an hour ago through an email from the Prime Minister's office that tells us as of, I guess, an hour from now, the Prime Minister will depart for Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, to attend the signing of a Middle East peace plan aimed at ending the war in Gaza. As we've heard mentioned already, he will not be the only head of state there. He will be one of 20 or so, probably more. Along with him, obviously, U.S. President Donald Trump, Keir Starmer from Britain, Emmanuel Macron from France, Giorgia Meloni from Italy, the Spanish Prime Minister, Turkish, Jordanian heads of state. There will be a large group of people there to witness the signing of this historic pact. The big question many people have for Canada is, what is our role moving forward from here? We know certainly that Canada was one of many countries that pushed forward with the idea of, with the fulfillment of certain obligations and things that must be done first, potentially recognizing a Palestinian state at some point in the future. That's still potentially in the very distant future. There are many criteria that have to be filled. But what is Canada going to do in the meantime? And we haven't really got a ton of answers about that, Adrienne. We do know that Canada plans to play a role in terms of aid. They say that Canadian aid supplies in many cases are already there in the hands of the Red Cross, in the hands of the UN, just waiting to be deployed. With these 5 days of 400 trucks a day rolling through, with that scaling up, we do know that it's likely Canadian aid will make its way into Gaza. But what happens beyond the aid? There's talk of, will Canada perhaps play some sort of peacekeeping role there to sustain this ceasefire? And Global Affairs Canada earlier this week did comment on that, but essentially saying that it's too early to tell at this point. I don't know if it's a matter of them seeking guidance from people on the ground there on what's needed. Will Canada be part of this international stabilization force to enforce a potential ceasefire, or at least make sure it sticks? We don't really know at this point.
This is so interesting because everything you're talking about is the enduring elements to this peace deal, and the fact that what makes us different seems to be that everyone agreed that they will deal with the thorniest issues later. Often in this conflict, the two sides will say, well, until we deal with all the issues, we're not dealing with any of the issues. But this is different. They seem to have dealt with the hostage and prisoner release and the pullback right away. But having said that, here we are. It's 12:30 a.m. in the region. We haven't seen anything yet, although there's every expectation things are on track.
Yes.
Mark, thanks very much for that. We'll come back to you as we get more news. You're looking live. Let's show you a shot here of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. It is now 12:36 a.m. in Jerusalem. Israel said today that it expected all of the living hostages held in Gaza to be released early Monday. So technically it is early Monday, but the deadline we're keeping an eye on is the arrival of U.S. President Donald Trump. He'll only be in Israel for a few hours after he lands before heading to Egypt for the signing of a Middle East peace plan. It is possible that some of those hostages will be removed from Gaza now, but as you can see, it is the middle of the night. Imagine how difficult and jarring that would be. So the next time that everyone is staring at is 8 a.m. It will be fully light. Perhaps that is a more practical time to get people out. But as soon as they get out, that is a critical moment. And once those living hostages are out, then you will see the transfer of Palestinian prisoners out of two Israeli prisons where they were transferred to overnight, awaiting their release. For the people of Gaza, the number one thing right now, aside from the continued safety, the continued silence in the skies as the airstrikes have stopped, is aid. It is now starting to get into Gaza. So to talk more about how this is going to work, we're joined by Dr. Uni Krishnan, who is the Global Humanitarian Director at Plan International, joining us now from Cairo in the middle of the night. Thank you very much for that, sir. Are you in touch with people in Gaza right now? What are they telling you?
Absolutely. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Yes, we are in touch with the local organizations in Gaza with whom Plan International has been collaborating for the last 2 years, through whom we have been delivering, running community kitchens, running clean water supplies, etc. But it's a tiny drop in the big scheme of things that is needed there. What they are telling us is two things. One, this is a new moment. This is a moment of hope for them, especially for children. We listened to a group of children 2 days just before the announcement was coming of the interim ceasefire or a temporary ceasefire at that moment, or the first phase of the ceasefire. They remained very hopeful. And one of the most important things they told us is that they would like to sleep, because a continuous bombardment and the sound of the thundering sound of the bombs and the missiles and the rockets and the continuous humming sound of the drones has resulted in children losing sleep. So their children's demands in those settings are very simple. They would like to sleep. They would like to play with their friends. They would like to reunite with their friends and families. Of course, they've been starving. They would like to have food, clean water, and many such children have witnessed things that no child should witness. So they also need emotional care and support.
It doesn't get more basic than clean food, clean water, and shelter. But, we're dealing with a strip where there has been famine in parts. And you can't just hand someone food if they have been, victim to the ravages of starvation. So how do you make sure that people aren't being sort of handed the wrong things that could do them harm?
Yeah, so to begin with, in humanitarian settings, agencies such as Plan International or other members of the Humanitarian Coalition in Canada, we always look at the principles involved in this. For example, to start with, relief supply should always be based on the humanitarian principle of impartiality, that is, need alone should define what is needed. And in this context, in addition to food for starving people, especially very vulnerable children and women, pregnant women, there are also other elements which you were just touching on, the level of micronutrients that are needed, and those who are in extreme stages of malnutrition, that therapeutic and clinical care that will be needed. So all these are considered when food supplies or therapeutic feeding programs are being launched there.
And in terms of shelter, we're entering sort of the beginning of the rainy season. I think it's already started raining once or twice this week for the first time in months. It doesn't look like there's a lot of usable shelter in Gaza right now.
You are absolutely right. What we have heard is that there's not even possibly even a single house where people can stay with that level of sense of security and safety. For example, I was looking at the figures just before I was coming for this program, 97% of the schools have sustained some levels of damage. It requires, and about 92% of the schools will require some serious reconstruction or rehabilitation. And also, if you look at hospitals, we're not looking at the homes right now. If you look at hospitals, about 94% of the hospitals have been destroyed or damaged. So we are talking about a huge area where there is nothing that exists right now which will provide a safe roof over the head of people, especially some of the most vulnerable, such as women and children. At the same time, a couple of days ago, in the last couple of days, I've been visiting a humanitarian warehouse in Cairo, where we are working closely with the Egyptian humanitarian organizations such as the Life Makers Foundation, with whom we have been partnering. So local volunteers, some of them university students from Egypt, along with from my colleagues from Plan International, we have been packing food packets that were getting ready to go to Gaza. You have to see the level of hope on the face of some of these young people who have been working for the last 2 years as volunteers, packing materials on a daily basis. That is, they were telling me that every truck that is leaving that warehouse is a ray of hope. And every truck that enters Gaza is a lifeline. It's a small drop, much more is needed, but that's a great beginning.
And one last question for you. I'm just listening to you talk, and the ambitions are urgent. How do you protect your aid workers and those supplies? Because it seems like there's such a power vacuum in Gaza right now. We know that there are still Hamas militants around. There are still various large families or gangs who are wrestling with Hamas militants and the Islamic Jihad and some of the other groups for control. How do you plan to protect your aid workers? Because just because the doors open doesn't necessarily mean that calm has arrived.
You're absolutely right. If you look at the casualty amongst aid workers in Gaza during the last 2 years, have been unprecedented in the history of wars and conflicts in the world. We have seen a record number of aid workers either being killed or being targeted. So, and the situation has not changed at all in the last few days. So the safety and security of the relief workers is going to be absolutely critical. So this is where, that unwavering commitment to humanity and the humanitarian workers and the most vulnerable should go hand in hand. This will require, opening borders and allowing unrestricted movement of aid supplies, relief materials and relief workers, and most importantly, permanent ceasefire. That is absolutely critical. And it is also important to donors, and especially the Canadian government and others, to make long-term commitments to rebuild Gaza brick by brick, because this relief and recovery is not going to be a 100-meter sprint. It's going to be a long marathon, and Gaza needs that support, and relief workers need that support. For example, for agencies such as Plan International, we are already stretched because of many other conflicts and disasters that are unfolding, such as the conflict in Sudan and other emergencies that has been unfolding, such as Ukraine and so on. So resources are very limited, and Gaza will require that attention and support right now. And it's not just about rebuilding, reconstructing homes and hospitals and schools, which is very important. And it's not just about food assistance and clean water, absolutely priority. But there are also invisible needs, such as the emotional care and support that is needed in Gaza is huge. And there are, I would say, 1,000 things are needed there, but we believe children are a great place to start.
Absolutely. Uni Krishnan, thank you, the Global Humanitarian Director at Plan International, who joined us from Cairo. Thank you, sir. So I want to show you something, if I can. Lishay Moran-Lavie, the wife of the hostage Omri Moran, posted a drawing on X that her daughters made for her husband, their father. And I just want to show you the drawing, if we can scroll ahead a little bit here. We understand that the green lettering on this drawing says father. Now, her tweet says, yesterday I told the girls that mommy's meetings in America went very well and that their daddy Omri might come home soon. They've been making paintings for him for 2 years. This one is my favorite. Little bit of a thing to bring you up to speed on here. Omri's children were 2 and 6 months old when the family was kidnapped. So they don't know him. They only know of him barely. And so this has been the situation with a lot of the hostage families, is they haven't known what on earth you say to kids, how you explain this to them. These are the sorts of things you hear when you spend any time in Hostages Square, which is where CBC's Crystal Commencing is right now, joining us now. So, Crystal, all these stories that are starting to emerge of how the families are talking to their kids about what has happened and what's about to happen.
So many birthdays, dinners, holidays where families haven't been able to be together and people haven't really known what to tell children. You know, there are so many kids who are always here at Hostages Square. And I was mentioning earlier that, you know, there are some paintings on the ground that you see kids going over and doing some draws and some scribbles. And, you know, it may not mean much to us walking around, but it definitely means a lot to those children. And they are aware, they are expressing knowing that, you know, the country is hurting and knowing that their family is sad and that the hostages need to be returned. Even young children here will tell you that sort of messaging because it's been a part of life for the last 2 years. They are well aware of the fact of what happened on October 7th, and they are well aware of the pain that people here have been enduring every single day since, hoping to see all of those individuals returned at some point. You know, often, you know, here, Adrienne, and I'm sure people were telling you this when you were here as well, they'll talk about life being frozen on to October 8th. They'll talk about the nation being shattered. And from the outside, sometimes it's hard to really get a true sense of what that means. But when you look at a child's painting, when you look at a mom trying to explain and tell the child, hey, Dad might come back tomorrow, maybe. That sort of information, trying to prepare them, is what those families have been going through every single day, of answering the question of, you know, where are they? When are they coming home? And that is a part of the struggle. It's a part of the reason why people are here tonight. It's a part of the reason that they want to come together. They want to be around each other. They want that physical connection. They want the emotional connection of being here. And, you know, for the past 2 years, this space has been a place to come together for them. And they've said that it's given them strength, it's given them power. And tonight they're saying that it is a moment when they will be able to rejoice, to relax, to cheer, and really, you know, kind of put behind them the nightmare that was this point. They know it's a long road. They know there's going to be so many more challenges starting the day after. But tonight, being here, no matter how long it takes, they are prepared to have a night here at the square in hopes of being able to explain to children tomorrow morning that somebody is coming home.
Yeah, wow, it's so interesting. They have such long roads ahead of them. CBC's Crystal Commencing in Tel Aviv. We were talking about some of these hostage families, and they do tell you interesting stories. You know, there are best friends, for example, Guy Gilboa and his best friend Aviatar David. They've been friends since they were little kids. They were taken together. They were largely held together. Then in January, they were driven to a release ceremony and then had to watch their friends get released, and then they were put back in tunnels. These are the sorts of things people have been going through, and it's going to take a lot to deal with. What you're looking at on the screen now is a little bit of a timeline of what's been happening, because we're now hours away from the expected release, and I have some asterisks around that, because we think it's 8 a.m. Local time in Jerusalem, 1 a.m., but until we see, we can't possibly know what's going to happen. Of the hostages expected to be released, 20 are thought to be alive. They'll be handed over to the Red Cross. Then they will be driven to Israel. They'll be going to the Reem military facility in southern Israel. Coincidentally, it is right next to the Nova Music Festival site where so many of them were kidnapped from. They will be assessed when they're there. Then some of them will be taken to various hospitals in Israel, depending upon their medical state. Once they are safely back in Israel, these 20 hostages, the living hostages, that is when the hundreds of Palestinian prisoners will be released. In the interim, U.S. President Donald Trump, as you have seen, is flying to the region. The plan is he will arrive in Israel at 9:20 a.m. local time. He will immediately address Israel's parliament. He will also be meeting with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, families of the hostages. He's indicated that he'd like to meet with some of the hostages, but if you just look at the timeline, some of them will have only been out of the country, out of Gaza for an hour or so, so they need to be with doctors at that point. After that, Trump will travel to Egypt for this summit on Gaza. It's only a one-day summit, but leaders from more than 20 countries will be there to discuss the next phases of the agreement. You cannot understate the importance of that this summit has been rallied so quickly. So many people will be there, gives many people hope that this is more than just phase one, that there is potential for much further to go, which is what everyone, frankly, needs to hear. So we know that the hostages are getting released. Who are these people? What do we know about them? I gave you a little bit of a hint about some of them, but Mark Carcaswell has been doing some homework and can provide some insight on some of the others. Can you tell us some stories?
Yeah, Adrienne, there's, as you mentioned, 20 hostages that we know of that are believed to still be alive, 28 who have perished in all of this. And in some cases, families don't even know if or when they will be getting these bodies back. The 20 who are alive, yes, they will be returned home, but as you mentioned, they've gone through a lot. And these are families that have been shattered for 2 years. There has a lot that has happened over the course of 2 years. 2 years of their lives just lost. There is a lot of ground to make up for. So we'll profile some of those who are expected to be returned home to their families in the coming hours. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. The first one that comes to us here is Matan Angrest, 22 years old, an Israeli soldier kidnapped from his military tank in southern Israel. He's the oldest of 4 kids in his kibbutz outside of Haifa. His family has been among some of the most vocal protesters calling for the release of these hostages over the course of the last 2 years. On the 2-year anniversary of the attack, his mother made a public statement where she called out to him publicly, said that she knows he's in pain, that she can't hug him. She can hear him whispering, "Come for me, Mom," and she says it breaks her heart to know that she can't protect him from everything he's gone through and everything still to go through. Gali Berman and Ziv Berman, 28-year-old fraternal twins, taken from their homes in a kibbutz on the kibbutz on the border with Gaza during the attack. 17 others abducted from that same kibbutz. But the Berman twins are the only hostages who remain in captivity, according to those who know where things are right now. They say that the family has heard from hostages who returned in a previous deal that the brothers are being held. They're alive, but they're being held separately. And this is the longest they have ever been separated. They lived right near each other in apartments right across from each other in their kibbutz. They were abducted alongside friends. One of them abducted when they rushed to go and help save a friend living nearby. Another one I want to talk about, Elkana Bobat, 36 years old, kidnapped from the actual Nova Music Festival. Hamas has published multiple videos filmed under duress, showing one where he has a fake telephone conversation with his wife, pleading for his release, pleading with them to get him out of Gaza. His son made binoculars in kindergarten, which he says he uses to go out and look for his dad. And one more, Ram Braslavsky, 21 years old, a security guard at the Nova Festival. He attempted to help festival goers evacuate from the area. He was injured during that, both of his hands injured. He was then kidnapped and taken away. There are videos of him digging his own grave.
There are so many stories to come. There are some parents, Mark, who have their children back but have not been able to ask them what happened because they're just not getting the signals that they're okay talking about it. So this is going to be a while. I want to throw you to another picture here. You're looking at Tel Aviv's Hostages Square. Again, this is the epicenter of vigils and protests in Israel over the last 2 years. It's almost 1 a.m. there now. The deadline for the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza is just a few hours away. And let's go to Gaza now. This is a live shot of Han Yunis in the Strip. People have been attempting to return to their homes all day. What's clear, there are no homes to return to if all goes to plan in the next few hours. 20 living hostages and the remains of another 28 will be exchanged by Hamas for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. There will be a pullback of Israeli forces. There will be aid flowing into Gaza. So you've been watching special coverage here on CBC News Network. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Please keep watching. We'll have continuing coverage. Mark will be shepherding that. When we see any movement, we'll bring it to you live after the break. Mark will be here, and I'll see you later this evening on The National.
What you are looking at right now is the scene in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square, the epicenter of vigils and protests in Israel over the last 2 years. It is now past 1 a.m. local time there, meaning that the deadline for the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza is now just a few hours away. Those in the square promising to stay put until those hostages emerge from captivity. In theory, it could happen any time now, but in all likelihood, won't happen till sometime around 8 a.m. local time. That's about 1 a.m. Eastern time. We will be here for you when it happens here on CBC News Network. And this is a live shot of Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. People have been trying to return to their homes all day, but what's certainly clear when you look at footage of the area, as people try to return to their homes, in large part, no homes for them to return to. Mostly rubble, dust, still no power or water or sewage. And so the joy of a ceasefire tempered by the hard reality that no one is returning to life as they knew it 2 years ago. Now, if all goes to plan in the next few hours, 20 living hostages and the remains of another 28 will be exchanged by Hamas for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees who are in Israeli jails and a pullback of Israeli forces in Gaza. Hello and welcome to the CBC Newsroom. I'm Mark Carcassole as we continue our comprehensive coverage on the peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Preparations are well underway in Tel Aviv as the return of those hostages that we mentioned draws near. As we mentioned, Hostages Square, the scene of demonstrations against the war for over 700 days now. But tonight, filled with growing anticipation. Crystal Gamansing is in the square now. She joins us. Crystal, tell us about the mood in the square right now. We're seeing a lot of smiles there.
Mark, it is really so different than what we've seen over the past 2 years. This has been one of the main sites of where at least every Saturday, if not more often, people come out in droves. They are together. They are demanding the release of the hostages. They are demanding an end to the war. Tonight, very different scene. People have been encouraged to come out. Slowly, the crowd has been building. It is a sense of calm. It's much gentler feeling emotionally. People are anticipating the release of those 20 hostages at some point. There are people who are painting pictures. There are children who are painting pictures, families just spending some time together. Everyone saying that they want to be here. They want to be a part of this. They want to know and see that those 20 living hostages are back into the safe hands of Israeli Defense Forces. That will be the group that the Red Cross turns over those individuals to. But then there are questions. How many of the hostages that we know have died in captivity? How many of their remains are known? How many of them will be returned? We've had 2 years of war in Gaza, and during negotiations, Hamas had told mediators that they don't know the whereabouts of all of the hostages, the remains, that they will have to work on that. So we are waiting. There are still so many unanswered questions of just what will tonight and the coming hours bring. So people are here. They are anticipating the return of those 20 living hostages. And I want to bring in a guest right now. Yahara is a 27-year-old Israeli. And you were saying that tonight for you, you don't necessarily have a smile on your face. You are anticipating the return, but you said you feel heavy. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'm definitely happy about it. That's why I'm here so late at night. But still, I have concerns about the future of Israel. We can't deny that we had the hard time before the war, and now when the war ends, still it ends with the sour taste because it had 2 years of war. It's a hard thing, and we all have friends that died at the war or at the October 7th. And now, when the hostages are coming back, it's a big relief. But still, we don't know what's going to be in the future with Gaza, with Hamas. For now, they're still here. They didn't agree to disarm, and they didn't agree to not be an organization anymore.
And that's your concern, because you're talking about phase 2 of those negotiations. The hostage return, the exchange of prisoners, that is phase 1. Phase 2 is some really difficult negotiating tactics, some negotiating points that have been stumbling blocks in previous talks. So that's the part that's making you feel would scared be the right word?
Yeah. The best thing that happened, that they decided to make it with steps, and they agreed to release all of the hostages at the step one, and that's a big relief because we know we can talk about the future in Gaza when we can breathe, when we all can breathe, at least everyone will be home. But still, we don't know what the future holds, and we don't have peace in the Middle East. We all say that Trump always says that he made peace in the Middle East, but it's not peace yet. He made a big thing. Ending the war was a thing that we all wished for, we all waited for, but still, we don't have peace here.
Is it hard to sort of balance that feeling of wanting to be happy, wanting to rejoice, wanting to celebrate, but also not knowing about the next day? What does it mean in a week? What does it mean in 2 weeks?
Actually, it's not that hard because we used to it. We used to have those things together all the time. We have our Memorial Day of soldiers next to our Independence Day. We always celebrating the good when we had like the bad at the background, always. So we know as a country, as people, as a nation to be happy when it needed and to be hopeful, but still we know that things in the reality are not that easy.
You're young, you're 27. What is your hope for the future of your state? What do you, if you could sit at that table, if you could write the future, can you give me a line of what that future would be?
Actually, I imagine that we will have leadership that can be the leadership of all of Israel and not divide us. Because we have an enemy, we have a common enemy, and that's the only thing that makes us unite. We're really devoted. Divided. We're really divided before the war. And when the war started, we all came together. But just because we had a common enemy. So what will happen when we don't have? We need to work inside now.
Come together, work together, stay together, and not
to
go back into those camps of what should happen, what do we do, and sort of keep with the united front.
Yeah, people have a short memory, and I'm really afraid that people, like in half a year from now, they just forget how united we were. And there's an election coming up at the next year, and I'm honestly afraid of that.
Well, I know that you're involved. I know that you're going to stay involved and that your friends and family are here. And I appreciate you coming and sharing your thoughts with us. I know that it is an emotional, intense time. So it does take a lot to share your feelings, on television. So I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Mark, you get a sense there of just, the complex series of feelings that people are having, happy today, but they know about their country, saying that, they don't want it to go back to those deep divisions. If you stand around here and you talk to people, there's a lot of emotion being expressed about politics. There's a lot of people who are unhappy with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a lot of people who say that he could have and should have ended the war earlier. We heard the exact opposite from the Prime Minister himself recently, saying no, that there was never a possibility of bringing all of the hostages back at once. We also heard today from the Israeli President, Isaac Herzog, who talked about the sense of needing to come together, to unite, to end the current pain. He made a point of thanking U.S. President Donald Trump, who will be here tomorrow, for his, I guess it's actually today, because it's after midnight here locally, who said that he's grateful for the U.S. president's efforts to get to this peace deal, at least phase one of this peace deal. He said quite clearly, stating to the international community that Israel wants peace, it doesn't want war, it wants to see a new reality for the Middle East. Whether that will happen, whether that will be easy, that is a big task that is going to be confronting those negotiators in Sharm el-Sheikh as they go for phase 2 of talks. That expected to happen right after the hostage return and the exchange of those nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners, Mark.
And Crystal, as people there in Hostages Square tell you about their hopes for the wider future of Israel and for the Middle East, people like Yara, I also want to talk about the immediate future of those 20 still living hostages that will be coming back from Gaza and the support system in place for them. They're going to need medical support. They're going to need emotional, mental support. Can you talk a little bit about the support that is available for these people who will be coming home after 2 years?
Yeah, well, the first thing to remember is that they do have some experience with this. It won't be the first hostage return that Israeli Defense Forces and medical staff are dealing with, and the families. So first of all, for the families' perspective, they have the support of the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, all of the other individuals who were in captivity who have since been released, the family members. They will be instrumental in providing emotional and mental support for the wider group of families who are waiting for their 20 individuals said to still be alive to be returned. Hospitals are prepared as soon as they get into the hands of the Red Cross. The Red Cross has said they do that initial assessment. They have a doctor with them. They explain what is going on, that they are being returned, that they will shortly be in the hands of Israel Defense Forces. There is a psychologist right away to sit with them and talk with them. They are given a full medical workup. Some will be, no doubt, in very, very rough condition. You're talking about more than 700 days in captivity in a location that has endured intense bombardments for the last 2 years, in locations where there has been very limited access to food, to fresh water. So we don't know the physical condition they will be in. We can all sort of assume the mental condition and the challenges that they have had to endure over the past 2 years, but they will be gently moved through the system, given supports, not rushed into interviews or being put on camera. We know that is something that both the government and the Families Forum has said that will happen in due course. But it all depends on the individual and how they take to returning. You can't really say this is how it's going to go, but everyone who's involved with this step, from the Red Cross to the IDF to the supports for the families, they are well aware that they are needed and will be needed for some time. And we did hear from the president earlier today saying that all of the supports that they require will be provided for them. U.S. President Donald Trump had originally asked to meet with some of them. We understand that he was told that no, it would be too soon, but there might be some sort of moment or images that are shared with him. We know that he has met many of the former individuals who are in captivity in Washington, D.C. He won't be here at Hostages Square, but he will be going to the Knesset. So we'll have to wait and see just how much public access they are faced with when they return into the hands of Israel Defense Forces and then to the wider community. But no doubt it will take time for them.
All right, CBC's Crystal Gamansing in Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Thank you for your reporting, Crystal. Now let's bring in CBC's Margaret Evans about what comes next. She joins us from Jerusalem tonight. Margaret, tell us about where negotiations stand at this point.
Well, as Crystal was explaining, or her guest was explaining to you, we're still in phase 1 of this overall 20-point plan that Donald Trump has presented. And people here are really still waiting to see whether or not they're going to get through that first phase of negotiation, whether we're going to actually see the release of hostages. One of the things that's happened today was that as a part of this truce negotiation, of course, the hostages are being released in exchange for Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli jails and 1,700 Gazans who are detained by Israel over the war without charge, who will also be returned by the Israeli Defense Forces. But in terms of the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, A list was presented by Hamas of the people they wanted released from the jails. There's been a discussion all day, a lot of anxiety on the Palestinian part because the Israeli Defense Forces apparently vetoed some of those prisoners. So that list is not clear. It gives you a sense of the hurdles that still exist. Another development over the past couple of days is we've started to see Israeli or Hamas fighters appearing on the streets of Gaza again, starting out with a few police, but then armed fighters coming back on the street. The disarmament issue is huge. Israel has said Gaza must be demilitarized and Hamas must give up its weapons and essentially have no part in governing Gaza. Hamas has not agreed, as far as we know, to give up its weapons. And clearly this is a message sent to the Gazan people, to the outside world, to the Israelis in particular, that Hamas is still there. So that gives you a sense of some of the issues that have been kicked down the road still to be negotiated with. And, you know, in part, you understand why it's happened the way that it has. People want to basically stem the bloodshed in Gaza. They want to see the hostages home. You've seen this great outpouring, this unity in the international community to get to that point. But the worry that some people have is that they're running so quickly to see that happens, that the ceasefire holds. It's not going to disappear down the road. We've got silence in the skies aside from the Israeli drones over Gaza. And we hopefully have the hostages returning in the next few hours and the Palestinian prisoners and detainees being exchanged as well. What people fear is that they're running so quickly they might trip over their feet because there's a lot of negotiations still to come.
Right, that's the thing. It's still such a long process. This is a phased approach, and this is phase one. If all goes as the plan says it should go, what is the next step in this process, Margaret?
Well, the next step is tomorrow. So if we get through tonight and the early hours of the morning, we're going to see this big peace summit held in Egypt. Donald Trump, after he addresses the Israeli Knesset here, will be going directly to Egypt. World leaders are attending. Canada's Mark Carney is coming. We've got, of course, the mediating countries from the Arab world. We have the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the French President Emmanuel Macron. So this is clearly a concerted effort to keep the momentum going, to keep the pressure up, to deal with those next issues. I think one of the more significant developments, we'll see how far that significance goes, is that the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has been included in this summit tomorrow. And it's really, you know, the Palestinians were actually not allowed to attend the United Nations meeting in September by the Americans, and there has been a lot of concern about the exclusion of any real Palestinian voices. You talk to Palestinians in the occupied territories here in East Jerusalem about how they feel. They're so relieved, so glad to see the airstrikes, the bombing stop, and to see this very beginning of aid starting to come in. But they have so many concerns about what the coming negotiations are going to mean for them, as a people. And, you know, person after person will say, nobody's talking to the Palestinian Authority. Nobody's talking to Palestinians in general, activists, civil society, and they see this division coming between Gaza and who might be governing Gaza and who might be, and what their relationship will be with the Palestinian Authority. Of course, one of the things that many countries are asking for is that the Palestinian Authority be reformed. But Israel has said it will not accept Palestinian Authorities' participation in the governing of Gaza. So it's significant that the Palestinian president has been invited to this meeting. It would be quite significant if he had not. But that's it's symbolic what's happening tomorrow. They're still going to have to get down to the nitty-gritty of some of the issues in the days, months, and years ahead if they want to get, anywhere near what Donald Trump has described as a lasting peace.
Many challenges to come. Margaret Evans reporting for us in Jerusalem. Thanks, Margaret. You're looking live now at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where it is now a little past 1 a.m. Israel saying today that it is expected all of the living hostages held in the Gaza Strip will be released early Monday. And as that deadline approaches, minute by minute, U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to arrive in that country. He's in the air now. He'll only be in Israel for a few hours after he lands before he heads over to Egypt for the summit of the signing of a Middle East peace plan. At this moment, we are joined by Maayan Shavit. She's a cousin of Carmel Gat, a slain hostage whose body was recovered by the IDF last September. She joins us now from Toronto. Maayan, first off, my condolences. Very sorry for your loss. I wanted to ask how you and your family members are feeling today, given the prospect of the release of many of the remaining hostages.
Well, I think even your fellow just said it. It's an international happy day, not only for the Israelis and Jewish people that we are going to get our hostages back finally, the live one and the murdered one, but the war potentially will be over and we can start heal. As I've been saying all along, it's a bittersweet moment.
I'm sorry?
Because Carmel.
You know what? Because I had 8 in there for some reason.
Carmel could have come back. It's the same deal that we had, but she's not. But other people, we have 20 live hostages that are coming back, and it's unbelievable. And 28 more that are hopefully will come back in full, and we can bury, and the families can have a closure.
Yeah,
I think it's fantastic.
Certainly, as you say, a bittersweet moment. I'm sure, knowing that while your loved one may not be coming home, others' loved ones will be coming home. But I'm wondering.
We all know how important the closure is.
Yes.
Even to have a body and to put it down to rest in the Holy Land.
The ceasefire as a whole, as it stands right now, this current deal in place, phase 1 going into action as we speak, does it feel different than all the previous ones to you?
It does. It feels more assured, like there's less question mark or there's always going to be fear, but there is way less fear of what the Hamas is going to do during it, or is it going to be, are they going to stop in the middle? So it feels more assuring that we are going to see all of them home and nothing going to stop it in the middle and nothing going to destroy this happy moment. Again, like I said, not only for us, but for also for the Palestinian that will be able to go back, if they want to go back into Gaza and to rebuild as well, because they are also, we call them also hostages. They're the hostages of Hamas. And about that, I actually want to have a question. If it's such a happy day, and this is what the pro-Palestinian technically were fighting for, why are they not celebrating in the streets about the end of the war? Why don't they see any celebration of the pro-Palestinian if that's what they were fighting for, to free them? So here they're being freed. So where is the celebration of that? That's how I see it. So
yeah, it's a good question. It's one I've heard multiple people ask at this point. Maayan, I want to ask you as well. I know that here in Canada and abroad, the families of many hostages, many of you keep in touch. You discuss the issues ahead. It has been sort of a team effort, a lot of lobbying to get to this point. I'm wondering, as you speak to the families of other hostages who have loved ones, potentially some who are waiting to see them come home today, how are they feeling? What is the sort of overall consensus?
I think it's like you don't know what to do with all these feelings. Like I said, there's so much fear after all these 2 years that we've been going through, especially the families that still have hostages in Gaza. It's the fear that, is it real? Is it actually happening? Even the father of Bal Cooperstein, and the other, they were saying, are you sure it's real? Until I see him, I can't believe it. I will not believe what people are telling me, because it sounds far-fetched. But it is real and it is happening. And these emotions are incredible. And I can tell you that even the families of hostages or murdered hostages that receive notes that their loved one might not come back tomorrow because they can't really know where it is right now, even they are very, very happy and extremely excited for everybody else on that day. And I can tell you also that families that, you know, their loved ones were murdered prior October 7th, and their murderer is being released in this deal, they're also saying, if this is what's going to bring the hostages home and we'll get closure and we can start rebuild and relive and smile and breathe, by all means, release them, even if they have blood on their hands. This is a happy day. This is a very, very happy and positive day. Yes, it's extremely frightening because nobody really knows, as you just heard, what's going to happen the day after. And that's the big question. Who is going to rule? Who is going to give, you know, orders? What about Hamas and the weapon that they're supposed to give away? All those questions that, you know, it's like we call the Swiss cheese. There's more holes than actually cheese in it. And that's how we feel about the next step of it. But right now we're gonna celebrate and we're gonna focus on the happiness and just to breathe again. I know I haven't breathed, you know, I don't have any breath anymore. I don't have any tears anymore because I'm too long years of waiting for our loved ones to come home.
I think anyone can understand that, certainly. And with so much uncertain going forward from here still, it's nice to see that you have some optimism, some positivity looking forward. Losing your cousin Carmel, a terrible tragedy for you and your family. And I wonder what you and your family do in this moment or going forward over the last 2 years, the best way that you find to honor her memory.
Well, I can tell you that on Saturday, actually, Carmel's mother, my aunt, was murdered on October 7th. And she's also known for, when Hamas took her picture, she took her tongue out. That's my Kinneret, that's my aunt. And October 7th was her 2 years memorial. And of course, she's laid next to Carmel. They both are together in the cemetery. And you know, now we're just praying that they keep watching us, over us. We are going to keep on fighting to that people worldwide will remember who they were. Each and every hostage that was murdered, we're going to make sure that they will remember. We have, even here in Toronto, we have benches and other memorials, you know, for the Canadian and our loved ones, you know, that were murdered. And we're just going to keep reminding and remembering them the way we remember. They're strong, passionate, compassionate, loving people that they were. That's how we will remember them. Like I said, it's extremely hard, extremely sad, but this is a happy day. Let's just continue to be happy at that moment.
Maayan Shavit is the cousin of murdered hostage Carmel Gad. Maayan, thank you so much for your time. Our condolences again, and enjoy your time with family tonight.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You are looking over Hostages Square in Tel Aviv as people wait anxiously for the release of hostages being held in Gaza by Hamas. That transfer expected to happen within the coming hours, overnight. Very early in the morning, local time in Israel, around 1 a.m. or so Eastern time. We'll be right back here on CBC News Network with all the latest. This was the scene a little earlier today at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. U.S. President Donald Trump under the umbrella, making his way up into Air Force One. He's now making his way to Tel Aviv on that very plane. He's in the air as we speak. When he gets there, President Trump will meet with the families of the remaining Israeli hostages. He will also be addressing the Israeli Knesset. After that, Trump will be headed to Egypt for a summit on the Gaza peace agreement. There he will be joined by other world leaders, more than 20 of them. They include Prime Minister Mark Carney and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. We will be keeping an eye on all of that for you throughout the evening here on CBC News Network. Now, joining us now is CBC's Katie Simpson, joining us from Washington, D.C. Katie, thank you for being here. What is President Trump expected to do while he's in the Middle East? We know it's a short trip, but he's got a lot on the agenda.
Yeah, Donald Trump will, once he arrives on the ground, he is expected to meet with hostage families as well, possibly some hostages. We're still waiting for some clarity from the White House whether, in fact, some of those hostages might have been people who are recently released. However, we don't know that just yet. And given concern for the health and condition they may be in, it's unclear if that's something that can happen. But he will be speaking with hostage families. Trump has hosted hostage families a number of times in the White House as he's continued to push to try and bring the hostages home. This is something that he has been consistently pushing for since he returned to office back in January. Donald Trump spoke with reporters before he stepped on board Air Force One, sort of setting the tone and expectation as he heads out for this trip.
So this is going to be a very special time, and I guess if you read your own papers and your own networks, everybody's very excited about this moment in time. So I'll see you on the plane. I think you're traveling with us, but this is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved, and we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before. So I'll see you on the plane, and we're going to have a good time.
So Donald Trump continued that sort of projection of confidence that this deal is here and this deal is here to last, telling reporters on board Air Force One that he declares the war over. He was asked a question about, why has Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not gone that far to say, this war is over? And Donald Trump said, it's over, okay, you understand that, sort of pushing back against that question. He also credited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, praising his leadership for Israel in this moment. The U.S., of course, being a very strong ally of Israel. And even though he acknowledged that there have been some difficult moments, some difficulties that they've had in the relationship, that, of course, being, a few moments in the lead up to sort of the breakthrough that took place last week. We know that, Donald Trump was very, very frustrated with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over that early September attack in Qatar when Israel targeted Hamas leadership in Qatar, and the United States did not get a heads up about that. That was something that really frustrated and motivated Donald Trump to put additional pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu to get closer to the point where what the world is witnessing just now, to this point now. Donald Trump also spoke about the plan to rebuild Gaza and how quickly he wants that to go ahead. He spoke with reporters on board Air Force One. Have a listen to what he has to say.
It's going to start really essentially immediately. I mean, they're going to have to start by removing a lot of the structures that you see that are down to the ground. I mean, it's blasted. This is like a demolition site. Almost the entire site is. So you have to get rid of what you have there. You have structures that are very dangerous. They're falling down. If they haven't fallen, they're going to fall down of their own volition.
Trump also said he is open to going to Gaza, but that's not something that's on his agenda. That's something that he said possibly in the future. But again, so he'll start in Israel. He'll meet with some hostage families, possibly some hostages as well. Then he'll address the Israeli parliament. He's the first U.S. president to do that since 2008. George W. Bush was the last U.S. president to address the Knesset. And then he'll head to Egypt to oversee that peace ceremony and take part part in that meeting. Donald Trump is intent on taking ownership of this, taking leadership of this, and his presence at this event, at this meeting in Egypt, really certainly underscores the U.S. commitment to this.
All right, now, Katie, let's move from the next 24 hours or so to the coming days and weeks ahead. What more are we learning from Washington about what to expect in the near future?
Well, Vice President J.D. Vance appeared on several U.S. talk shows today, to shed a little bit more light on what the U.S. will be doing and what they expect to see. J.D. Vance confirming that U.S. troops that are already stationed in the region, they will not be going into Gaza. They will also not be taking on a peacekeeper-type role. They will be there to ensure that the ceasefire and this peace deal, that the terms are being abided by all sides on this. So he said inevitably there are going to be complaints. There are going to be challenges, and that these troops are there to sort of be a monitor and sort of help, bolster the American presence in that region. He said that other countries will be taking the lead in terms of a peacekeeping role, citing Indonesia, citing other Muslim majority countries that will be taking on that kind of a role in the weeks ahead. But that's a little bit of insight from the Americans on what they are looking toward next at this very delicate, very fragile moment.
Katie Simpson reporting for us in Washington, D.C. Katie, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Humanitarian supplies, meanwhile, entering Gaza. They're being ramped up under the U.S. brokered peace deal. The Israeli military body in charge of aid in the territory says that they're on track to reach 600 trucks per day, as stipulated in the agreement. This is video from Khan Yunis capturing the chaos of those aid deliveries. Palestinians swarming trucks to get their hands on supplies that they have been desperately short of for most of the last 2 years. Israeli offensives, restrictions on humanitarian aid, it's all triggered a hunger crisis, including famine in parts of Gaza. The United Nations says it has about 170,000 tons of food, medicine, and other supplies all ready to enter once Israel gives it the green light. As we see those trucks of aid flowing into Gaza, I want to bring in Loué Al Ghul. He's a Palestinian Canadian with family in Gaza. He joins us tonight from Winnipeg. Mr. Al Ghul, thank you so much for joining us. Very significant moment. We'd like to know...
Thank you for having me, Andrew.
Of course, our pleasure. How are you feeling right now? What's going through your mind, knowing that in just a few hours, hopefully, if all goes well, this major step towards peace, the release of hostages, prisoners, how are you feeling right now?
I'm very hopeful, a little bit worried about the reaction of the Israeli government as happened earlier this year in January, that they might retract from this process of peace. But I'm very hopeful that things are going to go forward. I spoke with my family in Gaza. I speak with them daily. I spoke with them today as well. Very happy, but also a little bit pessimistic because while this is happening, drones still flying all over them. Yesterday there was bombing. So they're hearing the news and building their hope on that. That's why you're not seeing a lot of people in the streets celebrating, because there are actually still, as of yesterday, bombing, unfortunately. But having said that, I'm hoping for the best.
It's nice to hear at least of some optimism. Certainly, this is not the first ceasefire, truce, peace deal, however you want to word it. Is there something in this deal, either in the way it's made up, the way it's written, the way it's been carried out thus far, that is different to you, that might lend itself more towards a sense of optimism finally this time around?
Well, the difference in this time around is that there are a lot of countries and leaders of the world are coming together, trying to put more pressure on Israel. We've seen how Israel government has reacted. And I'm very specific by saying the Israeli government, because I know some Israeli people who are very well supportive of peace and against this Netanyahu government, who have been, according to international court of justice and United Nations, have been committing genocide and an apartheid system. So the reason why there is a lot of hesitations on the Palestinian side is this Netanyahu government and its cabinet are the same ones who have said that they're going to carpet bomb Gaza, that the Palestinians there are human animals, that that they are going to displace all the Palestinian people outside of Gaza and have settlements there. So the government haven't changed, the cabinet haven't changed, but what I see different this time is that there's a lot of international world voice trying to push this hard. Although I honestly am disappointed, very, very disappointed in the reaction internationally for the genocide that we've been watching for the last 2 years committed in front of our eyes and without any even embargo or anything taken against the Israeli government. I'm very happy and thankful for President Trump for changing his view from initially saying that he's gonna make Gaza into a resort, which was very humiliating for all Palestinians. And now he's saying the war should stop and people should rebuild, which is very promising change.
Let me take that opportunity then to ask you, I mean, where we stand right now, Gaza is absolutely devastated. There is a massive rebuild that's going to need to be done, not just construction, new leadership, essentially a new Gaza. What would you like to see here?
I think before the build of Gaza physically and building-wise and so on, I think there has to be a drastic change in the way Palestinian people should be treated. They should be recognized. I'm glad that Canada and UK and other countries have came to recognize Palestine as a state, but there has to be a recap about history. This is a country that has been occupied. We, as a human race, should celebrate that there's only one country left in the world where there is an apartheid, where people are treated differently. It depends on their class or religion. And thankfully, there's only one country. But we need to deal with this. I mean, I know that I spoke with many of my friends who are Jewish as well, and some of them are saying, they're worried about opening Israel into having a complete democratic elections where everybody can run for power. And the same thing that happened to Germany, it will happen back to them in Israel. And my answer to that is Palestinian people never did this to the Jewish people in Europe. That was not us, it was Germany. We've always welcomed everybody. We have Palestinian Jews and Christians and Baha'is and Muslims and atheists. We have no discrimination. As a nation, Palestine have never in the history, and I challenge anyone to prove me wrong, never in the history attacked any neighboring country. Even Hamas, that I completely disagree with, have never attacked any Jewish or non-Jewish person outside of Israel. They're fighting for, even though I disagree with the way they're doing things, they're fighting for their freedom. The freedom to exist, to survive. Before October 7th, people don't know this, but there was 79% unemployment rate in Gaza. They don't control their sea or water or land access, electricity, water, and so on, so on. So any people, whether they are in Canada as indigenous people, in South Africa as indigenous people, in Palestine and Israel as indigenous people, will fight injustice. The only way to deal with this, to completely come to a peace, is to treat everybody equally, to recognize who are the indigenous people of the land, accept them. And I'm not saying that Israel should go away. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it should apply the same equal treatment to all the people who live there, regardless of where they come from, or their religion, or their color, or their background. That's the only way to achieve everlasting peace.
Well, this is the first step in what is said to be a very lengthy process. Louis Al Ghul in Winnipeg, Palestinian Canadian with family in Gaza. Thank you for your time tonight. Enjoy your night with your family.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has arrived in Egypt ahead of tomorrow's Gaza Peace Summit. Starmer is one of several world leaders, including Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas, headed to the coastal city of Sharm el-Sheikh for the meeting. It will include a signing ceremony for an agreement aimed at ending the conflict in Gaza. As you know, CBC's Tom Perry is in Cairo for us tonight and joins us with more. Tom, what's the latest from Cairo?
Well, as you mentioned, we're seeing leaders either on the way or arriving here in Egypt for this summit at Sharm el-Sheikh. You mentioned Keir Starmer. Emmanuel Macron is on his way. We've been hearing from Donald Trump, who's on his way here. And we actually saw Mark Carney, Canada's Prime Minister, departing today to make his way to Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, what's going to come of this? You're going to have all these world leaders coming from really everywhere to talk about this peace deal between Hamas and Israel. You're not going to have the Israelis or Hamas there to talk about it. So maybe this is going to be more focused on underlining how the world wants this peace deal to stick, how they want to see aid getting into the Palestinian people, and talking about really what comes next, because the goals set at this summit are well, one, ending this conflict in Gaza, but also finding really a larger, wider peace in the Middle East. Obviously a tall order. Donald Trump's only going to be in the region for a few hours. This summit on Monday is only going to last a couple of hours. So don't maybe not expect really deep answers coming out of it, but maybe this is an expression of concern, maybe an expression just of relief that for now at least the war in Gaza, the fighting in Gaza is over. The hope being now that this can lead to something, a better future for the people of Gaza, the people of the Middle East, the people of Israel. But right now, of course, everyone just waiting to see what happens next.
I think that's the point we keep making here tonight, is that this is just phase one of many to come, a long road, certainly. But with so many world leaders descending on Egypt of all stripes for this summit, is there any sort of uniform idea, uniform definition of what success looks like here ultimately?
You know, I don't know. I've been thinking about this. I don't know how you would define success coming out of this meeting. As I said, it's not a very long meeting. I don't know how in-depth it's going to be. We'll have to watch and see. But, you know, as I said, I think that there could be value in leaders coming together and just expressing that common commitment to making sure that this ceasefire ends, or that ceasefire continues, that making sure that the hostages come home, that the violence ends. And I think as well, if you're going to measure success, it would be, in that the hostages come home, that the Palestinian prisoners are released, that the violence ends, that this ceasefire sticks, and that, of course, the aid that we've been talking about through the day, the aid that's been promised now as part of this ceasefire deal, gets to the Palestinian people in Gaza who've suffered through more than 2 years of war. I think in the short term, that can be a measure of success moving forward. But I guess in the longer term, we're going to have to wait and see where this all leads, whether there can be a lasting peace in the Middle East. So I don't expect that to be determined at this summit, but who knows? Maybe it'll be the first steps.
Hopefully. CBC's Tom Perry reporting for us in Cairo tonight. Thank you so much, Tom. Palestinians returning home to Gaza City are being met with scenes of immense destruction of their homes, total destruction of their homes and their livelihoods. The ceasefire is holding for a third day now, and hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have been able to safely go back to the north of the enclave. Now, they're picking up shovels and equipment, as you can see, trying to piece their neighborhoods back together themselves, what semblance of them they can anyway. The United Nations says 92% of Gaza's residents have had their homes destroyed or damaged. Tomorrow's peace summit in Egypt is aimed at charting a path forward after 2 years of war and destruction, including the huge task, of course, of rebuilding Gaza, moving it into the future. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says his government is ready to play a leading role in Gaza's reconstruction. Global leaders are working to pave the way for long-standing peace in the region. Prime Minister Mark Carney, as Tom Perry mentioned earlier, headed to Egypt as we speak tonight to take part in a summit co-chaired by U.S. President Donald Trump, also currently headed that way. Leaders from more than 20 countries will be at the table in Sharm el-Sheikh. CBC's senior correspondent Susan Ormiston joins us now from London. Susan, what more can you tell us about the international efforts to maintain this fragile truce?
Well, you're going to see it on full display within 12 hours. I mean, there's a reason why all these countries are coming to Egypt, both to celebrate what this is, which is remarkable. Hostages coming home in exchange for prisoners and detainees in Gaza. But it is a first step. And they are going to be asked, these countries, including Canada's Mark Carney, to contribute, to rebuild, to get in there, get dirty, to send money to reconstruct Gaza, which the President of the United States described tonight as just a disaster zone. It's clear to everyone. It's been that way for some time. The Secretary General of the UN is also coming to Sharm el-Sheikh, and he's been very vocal about Israel's war in Gaza. The European leaders, Macron, Italy's Meloni, in part because the EU in particular is going to be tapped again for aid contributions to reconstruct. And Macron and Starmer reportedly are trying to fill in some of the crucial details for this peace plan. We haven't seen very many details, and many analysts and diplomats are warning that it is folly to say there's a peace plan when there aren't critical details already hammered out. So some of that may happen tomorrow, more likely in coming days. So this is not the end. It's the beginning of filling out some kind of a substantive plan that can go into the future. There is a board of peace announced by President Trump. He said former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair would be shepherding it. And today Blair met with the Palestinian Authority deputy president in Jordan, trying out whether he would be accepted as someone who could help engineer the reconstruction process. And again, very few details, but it appears that he has been endorsed, at least by the Palestinian Authority, to be involved, even though Hamas has said they don't want Blair involved and they don't want any foreign guardian for Palestine. They said that when that was announced. So we are going to see this mammoth job of trying to assess the destruction and begin to rebuild in still a very fragile landscape.
Isn't the big question that many people have, and it's probably the one that's most difficult to answer because, there's not really much data to go on at this point, but what would need to happen to make this peace deal hold, right? There have been so many before that haven't, and not in the, too distant past. What factors, given your experience, people you've spoken to, what factors do you think could cause the ceasefire to break down potentially, worst case scenario?
Well, there are definitely several outstanding fault lines. When and how will Israel withdraw? Would Hamas agree to give up their arms, and how? Neither of those two key points have been laid out yet or agreed on. And according to the 20-point plan, there is to be this international stabilization force that we've been talking about, but there's no detail on who's on that force, its size, or its mandate. It is meant to keep the peace so that Israel will withdraw completely from Gaza, but that timeline nor its detail has been hammered out either. And you're going to see Arab and Muslim states being called on to join that international force, but they haven't signed on. And Hamas itself has shown itself in recent days to be exerting its armed presence inside Gaza, particularly in the areas not controlled by Israel, and publicly saying it has a right to keep its arms. So there's a big gap there between reality and talk. The other thing is, who's going to actually go in and reconstruct? How much will that cost? Who will come up with the money? And if the IDF goes through with its plan to destroy the remaining labyrinth of Hamas tunnels, how is that going to happen with Hamas still there? So these issues make this a fragile situation. We won't see all of them resolved tomorrow, not by a long shot. There's a lot of work to do here to come to the place that Trump said tonight, which is the war is over.
You hit it on the head there. CBC's Susan Ormiston in London. Thank you, Susan.
Welcome.
And as we have been reporting, preparations are underway in Israel for the return of 48 hostages, 20 of them thought to still be alive. Families anxiously waiting to reunite with their loved ones after months of anguish. It's a feeling that Avihai Brodich is very familiar with. His wife and 3 young children were kidnapped by Hamas during the October 7th attacks. They were released in November of 2023 after being held hostage for 51 days. He says he's relieved that the hostages are returning, but he knows that healing will take much more time.
I know it's going to be very difficult, but I know that everybody's going to give them everything that they need. Everybody in Israel is so thrilled. People are crying, people see me and they start crying. So, we've been waiting for this for so long. They're going to get all the support that anybody ever can give them. I think, we remain united these 2 years, and we're going to be even more united when they come back. Everybody is just going to give them everything they need. It's going to be really hard. We don't know what situation they're going to come back. We know they were starved. We know they were abused. We know in horrible ways. But, they survived. Those that survived are going to get everything they can. And we know, it's going to be it's going to take time to heal, but we're going to heal. We're going to heal as a nation, and we need those hostages back to start healing as a nation. So it's a great, great thing.
is the husband and father of 4 hostages released earlier by Hamas, so he speaks from experience there. Right now, you are looking at Tel Aviv's Hostages Square. And this is where there have been ongoing vigils and protests in Israel over the last 2 years. It's almost 2 a.m. there now, and the deadline for the release of the remaining hostages in Gaza just a few hours away at this point. And if all goes to plan, over the next few hours, 20 living hostages and the remains of another 28 who have died in Gaza will be exchanged by Hamas for hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees, and a pullback of Israeli forces within Gaza. And here's a shot at Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. People in the Strip trying to return to their homes all day, or what is left of them, because what is clear more than anything else is there are largely no homes to return to after all of the bombardment over the last 2 years. You have been watching special coverage here on CBC News Network. We will be back after this break with all of your latest news. Stay with us.